to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and good evening. In accordance with requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. Is there any public comment from the board?
I wanted to mention that although last month the pancake breakfast was on the first week of the month, this week it's going to be the second Wednesday on December 12th. I'd like to also thank all the folks who came out to do the decorating of the town center and the gazebo last weekend. I think it looks beautiful. A special thanks to Mark Flagg, who came out with his bucket truck to get up in all the high places. It was fun and it looks great. Thank you very much.
Is there any public comment from the public?
Tom Alonzo, 284 Lancaster Avenue. First, I just want a couple of comments before why I came here. But I'm sorry that I was not able to say this in front of Mr. Ebersol, and that there wasn't a meeting between his last one, town meeting, and now. But I did want to say for the record how much I really enjoyed serving with him and how much I applaud his service, not only his time as selectman in town, but all the other positions that he held. He really was a true historian of the town, a true public servant in every regard. It was a pleasure to work with, and he came prepared, had great ideas, was great at discussing things, debating, standing his position on many matters, and he'll be missed on the board and in town, and I certainly wish him all the best in his future endeavors. It really is a loss for Lunenburg, but an opportunity on the board for someone else, so that's good. I also, according to what Ms. Luck just said, I was at the tree lighting, and I want to thank everybody for doing that. It's a wonderful event. It was a great weather this year, so it was really crowded, which was great to see. And it's always a good time to start the season and really bring the community together. One of the many events over the years that bring the community together. Now, as vice chair of the board of directors of the Boys and Girls Club, I want to announce that yesterday was the first day of the 12 days or so before Christmas holiday raffle. So we were able to raffle off a Christmas tree from Pierce's Christmas Tree Farm here in Lunenburg. And today we raffled off a $50 gift certificate to Ixtapa. So I want to thank our sponsors, Pierce's and Ixtapa, for doing that. The next few days coming up, we have a gift certificate to Dario's, a family 4-pack of theater tickets to Theater on the Mount, a gift certificate to the Bull Run Restaurant, 5 deluxe washes coming up on next Monday for the Whalum Wash here in town, and then a week from tonight will be a gift certificate to Elena's. It's a gift basket. You're still able to enter in this. You can enter in online. At www.bgcluboflunenburg.org. Click on, when you see the holiday raffle logo, click on the more info, and you can enter online. The drawings are each weekday at 3:30, and they're broadcast live from the Boys and Girls Club. So that's fun to watch all the kids as they sing songs and as they load the big ping pong ball cage. And of course, the grand prize is going to be December, 2 weeks from tonight, December 18th. That'll be $2,500. We have passed the $100 mark. In fact, we're at 201 entrants. And we have another challenge out there that if we get to 300 entrants, then the grand prize will go up to $3,000. So you can get online to get tickets. It's for a great cause. You can win some great prizes, etc. And yet again, we hope people believe it's a great community event and a great community organization that serves all the youth of the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our first order of business this evening is a reorganization of the board. As a result of the resignation of Bob Ebersol, we have a vacancy among the officers of the board. The officers of the board are the chair, vice chair, and clerk. And I will entertain nomination?
I would like to nominate Damon McQuaid as vice chair.
Is there a second?
Second myself.
I will second. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Is there any discussion?
I just feel that Damon would be perfect. He was chairman of the planning board, and which is another very important board in our town, and I think he'd do a great job.
Okay. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? So that creates a vacancy as clerk. Do I have any nominations for clerk?
I nominate Phyllis Luck to be clerk.
Is there a second? I'll second. Is there any discussion? Oh, is there any other nominations? Is there any discussion?
Again, I think Phyllis will do a great job serving as clerk.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you for your new jobs. Appreciate it. Later on, we'll talk about filling the actual vacancy on the board. That's one of our agenda items. But our first appointment is a continuation of our tax classification hearing as required by Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, on the allocation of the on the issue of allocating the local property tax levy among the four classes of real and personal property. Now, we began this hearing at our last meeting, and this is a continuation. I assume that we have our assessor to present to us. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to start by introducing Josh. He's one of my colleagues that works with us in the assessor's office, and
Hi,
Josh does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of, well, just a lot of things, property inspections, interacting with property owners about their valuations and all of that. But I have the distinction tonight of appearing before you in the annual tax classification hearing. I actually took stock. This is my 25th year with the town of Lunenburg. I think there's maybe one or two other employees here that have been with the town longer, but it's been a really wonderful 25 years, kind of staggering to think of. Wanted to ask, do you all have the classification hearing document?
We do.
I know you have a bit of an agenda. I won't take a lot of time. For several of you, you've been through this drill before. The classification hearing takes up the question of a potential shift in tax burden. In communities that choose to do so, their selectmen or city council will actually shift the tax burden onto the commercial industrial property owner to gain a tax benefit to the residential property owners. Lunenburg historically has chosen not to shift the tax burden, maintaining a uniform tax rate across all classes of property. And you've done that largely for the reason that Lunenburg's commercial industrial sector carries a relatively low value, and it takes a sizable increase in commercial taxes to yield just a very modest reduction in residential values. So for that reason, the Board of Assessors has historically, and even this year, recommends that you adopt a uniform tax rate. Just to recap briefly, end of the year, this is a special year for the Assessor's Office in that as is required of all communities, we had to undergo a periodic triennial audit of our valuations and the methods that we employ in developing those valuations. That audit is really almost a year-long process, starting back in February. They perform as part of that study a data quality review. I think Josh participated in that process, just making sure that the quality of the data that we base our assessments on is is acceptable and meeting Department of Revenue standards. So we go through the whole year. It's a year-long process. We had hoped a month ago to be able to, actually 2 weeks ago, to come to you and conclude the classification hearing. We didn't quite get over the line with the Department of Revenue, but all of those approvals are in place. We can now ask you to vote your decision with respect to the classification hearing and the shift factors, and do so with Department of Revenue blessing. Just taking you through the document quickly. As you know, there are several sources of revenue that fund the town's budget. We have, for example, what we call local receipts. This includes everything from licenses, fees, auto excise revenue, just a whole host of miscellaneous revenue sources. We also have something called state aid in which the Commonwealth infuses a certain amount of revenue to support our town budget. But the property tax is by far the largest source of revenue, funding all of the services that benefit Lunenburg citizens, including schools, police, fire, even town hall where we stand, and all the programs and wonderful things that happen here. So our property tax levy this year, the amount that we're going to raise from property tax owners, comes to $26,941,205. I'd like to add that in that levy calculation, we also have new growth revenue came in, fortunately, a little bit stronger than we had forecast earlier in the year, $472,000. And this year, we're actually leaving some revenue on the table. About $60,000 in property tax revenue that we could have raised under Proposition 2.5, but opted not to raise. On the next page, you'll see the breakdown of our valuations by major class. As I pointed out to a few minutes ago, the commercial, industrial, personal property class represents a fairly small percentage of the overall base, just under 10%. That implies then that it would take about a 10% increase in commercial taxes to yield about a 1% reduction in residential taxes. Should talk briefly about valuations. You'll see at the bottom of page 4 that we're actually projecting a reduction in Lunenburg's tax rate, going from $19.70 per thousand to $18.68. Yet we know that the budget is increased and property taxes that we're going to collect will be up. That implies then, of course, that valuations are on the increase. Coming out of the revaluation, we're finding that our residential values are going to go up somewhere around 6 to 9%. Commercial values somewhere around 6-7%. So all of that a response to a very strong real estate market. I think anybody that's kind of monitored the market here will acknowledge that property values have increased and increased significantly. That is now being reflected in our new assessments. So combination of higher valuations, a lower tax rate will still yield for the average residential property owner, or property owner period, an increase in taxes. For the average residential property owner, on the last page, you'll see that we're predicting an average $195 annual increase in their property tax bills. The average tax amount going from $5,575 last year to $5,770 this year. As we all know, averages are made up of highs and lows and everything in between, so people need to take that in stride to recognize that if their property value is higher than the average, and that average now is $308,000 roughly. If your valuation's higher, your tax increase for the year will be a bit higher. We do offer up in the middle of the last page a motion, if you choose, that you can read into the record. And with that, Josh and I will answer any questions you have.
I guess my one question would be, when you mentioned that 60,000 in property taxed was not raised, what does that mean?
Means that when we tabulated the maximum allowable tax levy that Lunenburg can raise under Proposition 2.5, that amount came in a bit higher than the budget makers had built the budget around. So it's about $60,000, largely in new growth revenue that exceeded our earlier estimates.
So it wasn't realized? Or it was kept?
Well, we start the year with a big guesstimate as to what our new growth revenues will come in at. And we try to play that number a bit on the conservative side because, of course, the spring and summer construction season hasn't started. And we don't know really until the end of the summer, even well into fall, when we tabulate our new growth, what that new growth revenue will actually come in at. And so it came in a bit higher, largely on the back of personal property. Those are the taxes that we levy on businesses in town.
I can add to that. We used a new growth estimate for annual town meeting provided by the assessors, which was the 375, which was based on historical figures for new growth. And we, by special town meeting, only the personal property new growth had been certified. So we used that extra above our estimate during the special town meeting for additional revenues, but the new growth for real estate values had not been certified on November 13th. So that's where the additional 60,000.
Okay. Now, how often do you reassess? Every 3 years?
Every year.
Oh, every year.
It's every third year, and actually from this year forward, it will now be every fifth year that the Department of Revenue will come in and perform a comprehensive assessment audit. Now,
So do you, are the prices adjusted, real estate values adjusted every year, or will they be evaluated every 5 years?
every year.
Every year.
It's only the audit that takes place every 3 or now 5 years.
Harold, I know everybody's kind of sitting here trying to figure out their own, and, we're dealing with averages here. So let me ask a question. The residential rate has gone down from 19.70 to 18.68. And if I looked at my tax bill, there's a valuation number on there. Now, assuming I haven't improved my house, sold it, bought it, it's just another year went by, and I'm doing my little math in my living room. Am I applying my 1868 to that number, or is that number going to go up for every taxpayer?
Your valuation will go up, even if you've done nothing at all to your property.
Okay.
And that's simply a reflection of the market value increase.
Okay.
I might point out that our valuations are online. People can go to the town's website and
Actually posted in 2 locations under news and important documents. Posted it twice.
so.
May I please have a hard copy? It looks like you had some.
Oh, yes.
So can you access what your house is valued at?
Yes.
I believe it's arranged by location.
And I guess I have another question about when we, does this mean that we have to increase taxes 2.5%? Tonight, are we deciding that?
No, that was decided at town meeting, if I'm not mistaken, right?
All the
Yes.
figures were
Right.
voted at time.
That's why, depending on how you word it, that's why the $65,000 was left. The new growth came in higher than what was presented at town meeting, and I guess you probably could scramble and have another town meeting and try to
Not enough
recoup
time.
that, but you don't. You don't. You make your best guesstimate and then you march to
So the
that.
town doesn't lose that levy capacity. It's something that can be taken advantage of in the coming year.
So I guess my question is, if we decided to not increase the taxes 2.5%, when do we have to start talking about that?
As budgets are being formulated. So when you start the budget process, you're first starting with an estimate of the revenues that you have will have in the coming year. Of course, those are all estimates, but you build as you would in your household budget, you start with your income and sources of revenue, and then build a family budget around those numbers. So,
But this is budget season, and it's already too late.
No, this
No.
is for setting the tax rate for this year, the budget we've already
This is
voted
the
on.
back end of the process, not the
Yeah.
first, not the
Yeah,
front
but,
end of it.
so when do we talk about raising the taxes less than 2.5%?
We were talking about it in this budget year, and it would take effect a year from now when we're setting, when he comes in with the tax rate. You would have already decided
So like.
what services you were going to cut or what you were going to level
So
fund.
for 2020, that's the next chance we have to reduce taxes less than 2.5%.
By choosing to cut things so that we could.
Right. Right.
so
Or
this-
by spending less money.
essentially this winter and spring
Yes, starting in
So now we have to
for
start.
next year.
So right now, we have to start talking about it.
And now we're talking about the budgets, right?
Great.
And it would impact the line that is currently 23,087,000 in next year's number. And then you'd apply your new growth and exempt that and everything else over and above that, and you'd come up with your levy limit.
Now, do you recall the last time we overestimated new growth revenue?
Well, ideally, you do it every year.
Ideally, exactly. You want to build a budget around a conservative number. I remember one year, it was a very painful year for me here in Lunenburg, maybe 12, 13, 14 years ago, really pressed by the Finance Committee in that year to be aggressive in estimating new growth. And in that year, we came in under big crisis. We have a budget that's been approved, and we can't raise the money to fund that. And so it's not a position that we really want to be in.
So how much do you overestimate it by?
Well, you mean...
You try to keep it close, or do
You
you?
try to come in with a reasonable estimate, looking at the history of new growth revenues. Typically, I look at a 5-year history. I also gauge, are there any new projects that we're aware of that are coming online over and above what we had last year? There's no magic to any of that. You can try to somehow get your spreadsheet out and conjure up some numbers that appear to have some backing, but anything that you come up with is going to be an estimate at this point. Like I said, you have at this juncture almost 8 months, 7, 8 months of building activity that hasn't even started yet. So We're going to build more homes, more condominiums. We're going to get a big commercial property that comes online. Those are all things that we might have some early inkling about at this point, but until it's all said and done.
But if I'm not mistaken, you're underestimating,
Yes.
not overestimating. You're underestimating the revenue that's possible as a result of adding new growth into your formula. And you're being conservative by underestimating that amount.
I like the term being conservative, but
Right.
yes, we're underestimating.
Because the alternative is, like you said, painful when you don't have,
Right.
have some money.
So you overestimated it once in your 25 years, you think?
Yes. Took a bit of heat, by the way.
And it created a budget that
Deficit.
we couldn't afford based on our tax rate.
So, Mr. Chair, we have a motion here that's proposed, but since this is a hearing, do we have to ask if there's anybody here?
Yeah, I will.
Oh, I'm just asking about the process. I'm
Yes,
not
yes.
always trying to argue, I'm trying to ask.
Yes, yes.
Gee whiz.
We're not at the motion stage, but when we do, you
I'll
can make
just
the
be
motion.
silent.
Is there any other questions?
Not
Nope.
for me.
And a perfect segue, is there anybody here that would like to say anything or ask anything? Okay.
All right, so move the Board of Selectmen votes in accordance with MGL Chapter 40, Section 56 as amended, the percentage of local tax levy which will be borne by each class of real and personal property relative to setting the fiscal year 2019 tax rates and set the residential factor at 1.0 with the corresponding CIP shift of 1.0 pending approval of the town's annual tax recap by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So I believe this is what we have to
Yes.
sign, right? Where do we have to sign it?
Second page, bottom here.
Just
Is
in the white
anywhere-
space?
The white space on the bottom of the second
Okay.
page.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
You're
your
welcome.
25 years of service.
Informative as always.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, what we've just done is say that there's a single tax rate for residences and commercial and property, and that makes sense, given the presentation you just made, that trying to split it and differentiate it would not offset the residential to any significant degree and would put a burden on the other classes.
Right.
Okay.
If I can just comment briefly, there are communities, larger communities that have split rates that are looking to get to a single tax rate. City of Fitchburg, right next door, for example, has made huge strides in moving towards a single tax rate. So,
Great. Thank you very much.
okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Please skip over.
Yeah, our next agenda item, we're going to skip over for now and see if anybody does join us. So we'll move down to item number 4, interview appointments, reappointments, and resignations, and the town manager has 2, I believe.
Yes. I'm requesting 2 ratifications of appointments tonight, one for the mechanic position and one for a heavy equipment operator position at the DPW. And mechanic, the individual is James Stickler, and the heavy equipment operator, Patrick Broadmerkel.
So move we ratify the town manager's appointment of the DPW mechanic James Stickler and the heavy equipment operator Patrick Broadmerkel.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have a town manager report.
An update on the Summer Street project from Mass DOT. The contractor will most likely be wrapping up the construction season by the end of December. They paved the skim level course in Leominster last week to try to keep that section of the roadway intact over the winter. The curbing has been installed on the right side of the road coming from the intersection of John Fitch Highway and Summer Street to the Bakers Brook Bridge, and will be pouring the concrete for sidewalks behind the curbing, weather permitting. They do not anticipate installing the curb on the left side this construction season due to weather concerns. 3 drainage crews are scheduled to be on site this week to continue installing catch basins in Lunenburg and Leominster, with the goal of having all the catch basins installed before the winter shutdown occurs. All work is based on the weather. Recycling education and outreach. On November 26th, I met with Tessa David, the director of Mass Toss Cooperative, and the DPW director, Jack Rodequins, to discuss the next steps for a curbside recycling education campaign in an effort to reduce our contamination rates and recycle better. An informational handout from Mass DOT that lists acceptable items to put in recycling and items that cannot go into recycling will be mailed out with the upcoming tax bills as the first step in the process. Below is a timeline for the curbside recycling education campaign. We have already done so. Requested recycling residual contamination detail report with audit date from Casella. That's to occur in December. Remind and confirm Casella using OOPS tags for unacceptable recycling in December. Send Mass DEP's Recycle Smart sheet as a tax bill insert, which will be mailed out with the tax bills the end of December. Publish single-issue notifications through various communication channels, and that will occur monthly in 2019. Request recycling residual contamination detail report with audit and collection data from Casella to compare against baseline report that was issued in December. That would be done in April of 2019. Refocus single issue notification posts based on April audit results monthly throughout 2019. And conclude with a curbside residual contamination audit in late spring, early summer, depending on the staff available for that. So this is going to be a process. It's the education piece. It's not something we can expect to happen overnight, and it's going to take some effort. And the percentage ratios that they would like is unachievable, and Mass DEP knows that. It's 0.5% of 1%,
Wow.
which is
That's good.
yeah, it's unachievable. But we are going to do our best to reduce our contamination rates and try to get people to recycle in items that are appropriate and no single-use plastic bags. That's a big
Step in the right direction right there.
Yep, that's one of the main contaminants, as well as wire and metal. Don't throw in items that have liquid or food on them that's contaminated. People put their recycling in plastic bags. The facilities, they don't open up those bags. They just toss those into regular trash. So
Now, when will they start using the OOPS
they,
tags?
I did contact Casella to have them start using those, but not to deny taking the recycling at this point. We want to educate before.
So
we start
where would the
doing that.
OOPS tag be put if they're taking the recycling?
They could be put on a container if there is one available that's left.
Because I really do see people with, like they put all their beer cans in a white plastic bag and put it in recycling. So those are just thrown away.
Correct.
So how does that person get educated that they can't do that?
Through this
because they throw it
education
away.
campaign.
They're not putting it in yellow
Yeah.
bags. They're putting it in white bags. And
Yeah,
so
it's going to take some time of learning what's acceptable, what's not acceptable in
Like
recycling.
bagging up bottled returns is something people have probably always done, even to go redeem at the grocery store, because you need to contain them.
Yeah,
So
and the
there
bags
definitely is a-
themselves sometimes have a recycle symbol on them, so people think, oh, they're recyclable. But something I learned at a Mass Toss today was that even your shredded paper, they don't take that as anymore as well, because it jams up all the machines and it goes everywhere. So that should go
Oh,
right
so
in the
shredded
trash.
paper can't be recycled.
Right.
That's interesting. And I remember them saying that coat hangers, even though they're metal, they can't be recycled because
Yeah.
they jam up the machines.
Correct.
Which you wouldn't know.
Or
you know?
electronic wires, that people are trying to get rid of, a variety of. So we hope this will help. There's
You hear single stream and things, I think it makes you feel like you can put everything in.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is a great start, though. I'm really happy that something's going to be in the next tax bill. That's great work. All of these steps seem like we're really trying to get a handle on it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. 925 Mass Ave. Land Use Director Adam Burney, Town Council, and I met regarding the next steps for 925 Mass Ave, and we'll be proceeding with the tax title process in order to gain legal entry onto the property to conduct a Phase 1 assessment. I am currently looking into applying for grant funds for the assessment costs through Mass Development's Brownfields redevelopment program.
And that's the gas station?
Yes. Update on town facilities improvements. The town hall handicap accessible bathroom we're proposing. I've asked Monty Tech to take on this as a possible project between the carpentry, electrical, and plumbing trades, and we'll be meeting with the director of the trade school in the near future. The Ritter Building shutters. The shutters, if you notice, they've been removed by the DPW, and they will be obtaining prices for both repairing the existing shutters or replacing them with vinyl shutters.
I was kind of hoping that they weren't going to put them back up again to be historically accurate.
We could include that as part of our
That could be
facilities
So they
discussion.
weren't, historically accurate, they weren't shutters originally?
Right, they stuck them on there in the 60s when they put the addition on. If you see any of the older photos of the building, they weren't original to the structure.
I would agree that it may just be a pathway to de-shutter permanently.
Sounds like a,
Should cost less, too.
yeah.
Is that
You
right?
hope.
How washed behind where it was?
Yeah. We won't have to worry about taking them down again eventually.
Right.
So.
No, that's a great idea.
Mass DOT Safe Routes to Schools. As previously reported at a prior Selectmen's meeting, the primary school is listed on Mass DOT's list of schools enrolled in the Safe Routes to Schools program, which makes that school eligible for pedestrian and bicycle safety education and infrastructure funds that promote safer routes to schools for children that walk or ride bikes to school. I've forwarded the information on how Turkey Hill Elementary and the middle school could enroll in this program as well to Superintendent Burnham, and that our regional planning agency could assist in that application.
Great.
Fiscal 20 budget schedule and finance tool enhancements. Attached in your Google Drive are the important dates related to the fiscal 20 budget schedule. It's a draft schedule. The schedule outlines dates such as the date budget submissions from departments to the town manager are due, the presentation of the 5-year financial forecast, the capital plan presentation, the opening of the warrant for annual town meeting, the dates that the finance committee will meet with the various departments, and the public hearing on the budget. This will also be reviewed with the finance committee at their December 13th meeting. We will also be rolling out a new dashboard with financial data on our website that will allow users to compare our revenues and expenditures by category against other communities, and will provide demographic information. The goal of this tool is to provide transparency about the budget and uses visuals to show how tax dollars are spent in an easy-to-understand manner. The finance director and I will also be working on rolling out a new budget software that will be used internally to send out the fiscal 20 budget documents and tracks any changes by the end user and different versions of the proposed budget. And that software, for anyone, is called ClearGov, is the transparency dashboard that we'll be using on the website. And so you can go to cleargov.com now. You can type in Lunenburg. They have some of our data up through 2015, but obviously when it goes out on the website, we'll have everything current. Attendance at meetings and other announcements. Town Council office hours are Monday, December 17th, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. I attended a capital planning conference in Stowe on Friday, November 30th, put on by the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy and the UMass Collins Center for Public Management. The topics that I attended included innovations in capital planning, advanced capital planning, and communicating with the public about capital needs and costs. And I briefly discussed this with the capital planning committee at our meeting just prior to the board's meeting. Central Mass Municipal Recycling Coordinators Annual Lunch Celebration and Mass Toss Meeting. The DPW Administrative Assistant and I attended the Central Mass Municipal Recycling Coordinators and Mass Toss Meeting today to take a tour of the Gardner Transfer Station. Received an update on recycling markets from Mass DEP. There was a discussion on organics collection, city compost, the 2020 master plan from Mass DEP, and DEP's new recycling website titled recyclingsmart.org, which we also have all that information on our website, a link to Mass DEP's information. Lunenburg received an award today for Outstanding Solid Waste Program that each participating household averages less than 1,000 pounds of trash a year. So it's a distinction that should be noted.
Because we're throwing it all in recycling.
Yes. Yeah.
Get that on like a welcome to Lunenburg sign.
I will be attending a procurement training tomorrow that is all about acquisitions and dispositions of real property under MGL Chapter 30B, and this class provides credits towards maintaining my certification and will also be a useful refresher on real property. Very timely. The following are vacancies, paid positions: building commissioner, local inspector, and assistant mechanic. And vacancies on committees include a regular member and 2 alternate members on Agricultural Commission, a vacancy on the Architectural Preservation District Commission, vacancies on the Cultural Council, 1 vacancy on the Green Communities Task Force, 2 vacancies on Public Access Committee, and 2 associate vacancies on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And that's all I have.
I have a question, Heather, with the, just thinking of the property. Any updates on the Northfield Road rear property that was in the citizen petition?
No.
In regards to the
nothing
title? Okay.
I've received.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Oh, first thing is, I am really happy that they are working on the catch basins in the Summer Street project and trying to get that done before winter. That's really important. And I'm really also delighted with the work on recycling. In the FY budget schedule, it attached as a draft of the important dates. I don't know where that is.
It's in the Google Drive. Yep. So if you open up, actually says FY19 budget.
It says what?
It's an Excel
Says
sheet.
FY19
It's got a little green-
budget
it's got a little
calendar.
green
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And I like that clear gov information. I think that's going to be very helpful to citizens and to understand what we're doing. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions or comments on the town manager report? Thank you, Heather.
Welcome.
Okay, moving on to current business. First item is the Board of Selectmen appointment to the Charter Review Committee. Just a quick update on Charter Review. The current pass of the charter revisions is complete, and it has been annotated in color with 3 colors represented. One is minor changes that are of a typographical or spelling or something like that. Another color are what are considered non-controversial changes that are to make the charter consistent with MGL. And then the third are changes that may be controversial or not, but they're changes, if you will, to the charter. The process is we have some new members, and this agenda item, we'll add another member to the Charter Review Committee. We're going to reconfirm that we set a process. Let me step back just a touch. We set a process in the very beginning to say that we wanted a supermajority vote of the Charter Review Committee, 9 members, to include an item for review at town meeting. And we, all through the process, always maintained a supermajority before we made a decision to add something. We have several new members since that point in time, and now that we're at a kind of a point to say this is what we're going to start publicizing and socializing prior to town meeting, we want to just reconfirm that we do have still a majority of the committee in agreement. So there is one more meeting this month on the 12th of December, which will be in the Ritter Building, and then we're planning on scheduling the first of what should be at least 2, maybe more, public hearings on January 9th. And right now, we've reserved this room. We don't know if this conflicts with any other committees, but it'll be our first opportunity to have a public hearing and have the public see what the potential changes to the proposed changes to the charter are. And since we had our last public hearing quite a while ago before the last town meeting, when we determined that we weren't going to go forward with it at the town meeting, we've determined that it does not, in fact, need to be all or nothing, so that each of the recommended changes can be voted individually. So there'll be, and we're also, similar to ballot questions that we have on the state ballot, we're going to have a kind of a pro and a con statement for each of the items. That's still some work to be done, but the reason I kind of give that background is that a lot of the work of the committee believes a lot of the work is done already, and now it's just reviewing with the public and making minor adjustments and getting ready to socialize it, market it, and then present it at the annual town meeting. But with Mr. Ebersol's resignation, we have lost the Board of Selectmen representative, or the Board of Selectmen appointment, and we have also lost the chair of that committee. So that the committee will vote at our next meeting to replace the chair. I am the vice chair, so I'm kind of doing the agenda for that meeting, but I have some feelings about a selectman being the chair of that committee. I don't believe that's a good idea. I think it was good for Bob, just because of Bob and who Bob is, and his history with the town and some of the things like that. But I've made a note to the committee that I don't want to be chair of that committee. I'd like to stay on it, but I don't want to be chair. So we're gonna add a member and then determine. We're going to have a reorganization vote in that committee as well to replace Bob. So at this point, I'd like a discussion or a motion to talk about the selectman appointment to that committee.
Sure, Mr. Chair, if I may. I would be happy to rejoin the Charter Review Committee. I spent a lot of time on it, really enjoyed it, and only had to withdraw from it because once I became a selectman, Bob, myself, and yourself created quorum at each meeting. And so I stepped aside since we had 2 members. I would be delighted to rejoin and fill Bob's spot and sort of, obviously there's been work done in between now and then, but I went to the last meeting so I could get up to speed, and I would be happy to fill that spot.
At this point, because you've done so much work already, is it incumbent upon you to add another selectman, or would you not necessarily need to?
It would be helpful to keep an odd number of members, because
and so right now it's even.
Right. This creates an even. It doesn't require us to have a selectman member, okay? And it would be, the new member would be new to the process and have a kind of a learning curve to catch up on some of the discussions that already happened. But the committee did in fact say they wanted to replace Bob.
But they weren't, it's not under the charter of the committee, it does not necessarily have to be a member of the board.
Nope. In fact, the first go-around, the school committee had 2 members of the board that were not school committee members.
Oh, yep, that's right, I remember that. You know, I've been interested in the Charter Review Committee as well, and I've attended several of their meetings, so I'd also be willing to step up if we decided to have somebody from the board.
I was going into this assuming that I'd make a motion for Phyllis to do it because we can't replace Bob's institutional knowledge, but she's the next best thing we have going. So that's, I guess I'd make a motion for Phyllis. We can have discussion.
Okay. Is there a second? I'll second that. Is there any discussion?
Sure. I mean, I know I'm often, this board hasn't welcomed me in any way. I served on the Charter Review Committee since it began meeting. I had perfect attendance to all the meetings. I invested a lot of time, effort, and passion into the process. I've saw Bob at the last meeting, and he's been such a good mentor. And the only reason I had to leave the spot was because I became a selectman and default created quorum. So now where Bob has left, I would have been very proud and happy to resume my work on charter review. Invested a lot of time, not just at the meetings, but then meeting with the Cemetery Commission and a variety of other commissions as we got close to the public hearing. I guess I'll just have to say that I'm devastated that the attempt to continue exclude my efforts, and to say somebody's more experienced in going to join a position of which I had held is an enormous insult.
Well, it's like, again, not trying to insult you. That was the way, before we even came here, I didn't know you were interested in it. I was thinking Phyllis would be good for it just because, being around town, being involved with boards and committees for a longer period of time educates you more than, reading about it. But, it's like, again, if Phyllis doesn't want it, isn't adamant about it, I'd be fine with you. I think you do a fine job. It's just...
In regards to experience and whatnot, I've lived in Lunenburg for over 30 years, and although I didn't serve in roles of town government, I've been very, very active in my community and in my town in a lot of ways. And so, when you start talking about a resume and experience, I think I've lived and understood Lunenburg for maybe twice as long as Phyllis has been here. I just feel like somebody who had the role and had to leave because of more of a legal circumstance by creating quorum with Bob and Jamie. With Bob leaving, I was at the last meeting to I public comment, say goodbye to Bob again, and to express my interest in returning to Charter Review. I didn't see, other than Jamie and Bob, any other selectmen at the meeting last Wednesday. So in terms of interest and dedication, I hope that that would be seen in my continued following of the process.
I just want to make clear one thing. The reason that you are no longer a member of the board is because you were appointed to that board by the school committee, and they changed their appointments. The selectmen had 2 appointments to that board, and we had 2 representatives. It had nothing to do with quorum.
Well, they may have chosen to continue to have me there, but I couldn't because 3 selectmen on charter review was too many. We would have had to post each charter review committee as a selectmen's meeting, creating quorum, discussing policy.
I don't know why the school committee made their decision.
I guess just out of fairness to myself and my interest in this process, I'd just like to understand why I wouldn't be a good choice.
I didn't say that.
No, just so I can learn and grow. If I cannot resume something I've already worked hard on and expressed interest in, I would just like to understand what it is that I don't have to offer.
My decision, my recommendation was based solely on time in office, around all the bylaws, around the charter, on various boards. You can try to understand it as much as you want to, but in my opinion of doing this, you can't possibly replace actually being there and experiencing things with, reading about it or wanting to know about it.
There's members on the Charter Review Committee who are just citizens who are serving at large, and their vote is just as quality as somebody who has an elected role. But having had served on the committee, I have read through the charter, and time again, every time we had a meeting, we were emailed it, and I would just dive through it, find a small typo, a word that, so I have extensive experience with the charter, and have dedicated a lot of time to it, and I feel up to speed with the charter, and I feel like I would be a valid member, since I already served on the committee since its inception.
Well, I'm going to make my vote based on who I think is best for the town and who I think best represents the town, and in this particular seat, the Board of Selectmen. Frankly, I served with you when you were the school board representative, and you were the dissenting vote on many of the things, which is your right. But I don't believe that's in the best interest of the town.
So you believe what's in the best interest of the town is to form a group of like-minded people that don't create any, I guess, any reflection. When I became the lone dissenter in that process, it actually connected with a lot of the community that came to the public hearing. The room actually filled up that night, which was very rare. And I actually had to schedule phone calls because as the lone dissenter to the draft charter, anybody from a board or commission that had a concern, which there was many, started to reach out to me, formed a lot of new connections. And there was this one day where I had scheduled phone calls to communicate with people. So in terms of being what you referred to as the lone dissenter, I think that's healthy, and I think it's very fitting that you express that you don't like to hear someone else's voice.
That's not what I expressed.
You just said you wanted everybody to agree.
No, I did not. Are there any other nominations?
I suppose I've formally nominated myself.
Is there a second? I will second for the purpose of discussion.
Again, not in any way saying you're not qualified to do it, Katie. It's just...
So
Phyllis-
someone who hasn't served is better than somebody who has.
Not on... Yes, that's what I'm saying, but not in the way you're interpreting
Somebody who
it.
hasn't served on the committee is better than somebody who has.
You know, I have attended charter committee meetings. I have presented a change to the charter. So I'm also very interested in the charter.
Okay, I'll take the nominations in the order they were made. So all those in favor of Phyllis to be the selectman representative, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
Nay. Nay.
Thank you.
It's an excellent opportunity for the community to see how little voice is valued in our current government.
Our next item of current business is the annual license renewals for 2019. What we've done in the past is have the town manager read the renewals, and if there's any that are of concern to any of the boards, any members of the board, you can chime in, otherwise we can approve them by class, I guess. All right?
Okay. I'll read the alcohol license renewals first. For a restaurant all alcohol license, Kindred Spirits, also AAG LLC. An all alcohol restaurant for American Graffiti Inc., DBA American Graffiti. A wine and malt on premise license for PP Group LLC, doing business as Bangkok Hill. A package store wine and malt license for Central Mass Garden Center Inc., doing business as Central Mass Gardens. Package store all alcohol license for Elena's Gourmet Grocery Inc., doing business as Elena's Gourmet Grocery. A package store wine and malt license for Genghis Inc., doing business as Jack's Country Variety. A restaurant all alcohol license for Lunenburg Zetas Inc., doing business as Bad Larry's. A package wine and malt license for Global Montello Group Corp., doing business as Honey Farms, number 3829. A all alcohol restaurant license for Red Pepper Inc., doing business as Exapia Cantina. A package store wine and malt license for Ian Corporation, doing business as Hilltop Farms. A restaurant all alcohol license for Melinda's Magana Inc., doing business as Dario's. A general on-premise all alcohol license for Settlers Crossing Enterprise Inc., doing business as Settlers Pub. I have that right? General purpose on-premise all alcohol license for that one. A package store wine and malt license for Carol and Henry Baker for Baker's Whalum Variety. A package store all alcohol for Victory Distributors LLC, doing business as Hannaford Food and Drug. A restaurant all alcohol for Zhang Jun Lu Inc., doing business as Asian Imperial Garden. A all alcohol restaurant license for JK Waterfront Inc., doing business as On the Rocks. A all alcohol restaurant license for KJ Waterfront Inc., doing business as Embers Pizzeria. A general on-premise all alcohol license for 449 Corp., doing business as Lakeview Club. And a package store all alcohol license for St. Judas LLC, doing business as Lunenburg Liquors.
Move we approve the 2019 license renewal list for alcohol licenses as read by the town manager.
Is there a second?
Second.
By way of discussion, I'm curious, I didn't hear Bootleggers and Sean Patrick's or whatever their DBA is.
Yes, Simon Pure is the new name of Bootleggers. They owe taxes, so
Okay.
there'll be another opportunity at the
Okay.
December 18th meeting.
Okay. And then the Sean Patrick's one, I know we just did a change, but they still have to renew, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's pending too?
Yep.
Okay,
And
Any-
Donnelly's is
Okay.
not on that list.
okay.
Sorry.
Right. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Common Vic?
Okay. Is it all right if I just do the DBA name first?
Sure.
Yeah.
So Common Victular licenses, Lakeview Club, Kindred Spirits, American Graffiti, Hilltop Farms, Baker's Whalum Variety, Conrad's Drive-In, Settlers Pub, Dragonfly Garden Cafe, Jack's Country Variety, Honey Farms, number 3829, Shady Point Beach and Campground, Asian Imperial Garden, On the Rocks, Cabalbalicious, Embers Pizzeria, Lonnie Orchards, Bad Larry's, Dario's, Dunkin' Donuts, Lunenburg Exxon, Dippin' Donuts, Bangkok Hill, Presto Pizza, Zappia Cantina, Lunenburg Liquors, Stella's Coffee Shop, Hannaford Food and Drug, Whalum Kitchen, One Whalum Road, and Cherry Hill Ice Cream.
Move we approve the 2019 license renewal list for common victulars as read by the town manager.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay. The automatic amusement devices, Kindred Spirits, Bad Larry's, American Graffiti, Baker's Whalum Variety, Lakeview Club, and Whalum Gas.
Move we approve the 2019 license renewal list for automatic amusement devices as read by the town manager.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay. Jukebox license, Kindred Spirits, American Graffiti, On the Rocks, Bad Larry's, and Lakeview Club.
Move that we approve the 2019 license renewal list for jukebox licenses as read by the town manager.
Second.
Any discussion?
Oh, I think we need to discuss that.
Excuse me?
Nothing. I'm just making a joke.
I didn't,
I still find it crazy the state makes us
yeah.
hand license.
Right.
Oh, I agree. I get the joke now. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Weekday entertainment licenses, Kindred Spirits, Dragonfly Garden Cafe, American Graffiti, and Bad Larry's.
Move we approve the weekday entertainment licenses as read by the town manager.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And miscellaneous licenses, Kebabalicious, Lakeview Driving Range, Lloyd's Limousine, and First Choice Limousine.
Move we approve the miscellaneous licenses as read by the town manager.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Oh, just a quick discussion on that.
Sure.
Is Kebabalicious open? And what is the miscellaneous license?
It's a BYOB, and
Yep.
they paid their fee, I hope. They're
Yep.
open.
It's on the license type is
Yeah.
where it lists that for the miscellaneous, you'll see.
And the business is still open?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
intermittently.
Yeah, they take vacations sometimes. They put up a sign that says we'll be back.
Okay. And do they communicate that, or do they need to communicate that in terms of having a license involved with alcohol? If it's sort of coming and going?
Well, it's different than your annual liquor license, being a BYOB.
Okay.
If they had an annual liquor license, they would need to communicate
Okay.
when they close.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So do we vote on that?
We had a second, then we're at
Okay.
discussion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay.
Okay. The last is auto dealers. So for Class 1, North End Mazda, Central Mass Power Sports, Chapdelaine Truck Center, Inc., and Daewoo North, and North End Subaru. And Class 2 licenses, Baker's Towing, Mass Ave Motors, Inc., PMK Motor Sales, The Auto Barn, JG Service, North End Subaru, RC Motors, P&S Trucks and Parts, Inc., and Class 3, P&S Trucks and Parts, Inc., and Chapdelaine Auto Salvage.
Move we approve the 2019 license renewals for auto dealers as read by the town manager.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So when we're done, we got a lot of signing to do over here, so don't run out. All righty, so that's it on the licenses?
Yes, that's
Okay.
it.
Current business number 3, discussion with regard to calling a special town election for the vacant selectman seat. Now, I did a little bit of homework, and the charter and Mass General Law says that the selectmen may call for an election, and they will call for an election if 200 citizens petition us to do so. Other homework says that it costs the town somewhere between $4,500 and $5,200 to have an election. The other thing that's quite interesting is that 2 different rules, and I'm not sure whether they're mass rules or charter rules, but 57 days' notice must be given to the town clerk by the board. And then under Mass General Law, any special election has to occur 100 or more days prior to when the normal election would have been. So given all that math, the window is between, if we were to vote to have a special election tonight, it could take place between January 31st and February 7th. The window. And it would cost the town anywhere between $4,500 and $5,200 to do that.
And then whoever won would only serve for a few months and
Until the
then would
next
have to
election.
rerun
Exactly,
if we kept that timeline.
exactly.
And how does someone get on the ballot? Do we have to
Well,
just
the
by
norm-
petition or
Well,
caucus?
I talked to the town clerk today. We have to give her 57 days' notice. That would start a clock that would advertise it in some way.
Would there be a special caucus?
I don't know. I don't think there'd be a caucus, but I believe there probably would have to be signatures or something to get on that
Minimum
ballot.
number of signatures.
Right.
I would say my personal opinion is I couldn't justify spending $5,200 to gain a member for a couple of months before it expired. I think there's other ways that money could be applied and or saved.
I agree with you. The only thing that I thought of, and I think with this small window, that's not going to happen either, is I know there's some talk coming out of the planning board about a potential ballot question on prohibition of marijuana, but I don't think they're ready to ask us to put that on the ballot. I don't think we could put it on a ballot in the window of time we have. And I was just saying to do it combined. So I think
Okay.
it would more likely be on the normal ballot that would be done in the next normal election.
In regards to those ballot questions, they wanted them to be as close as possible to the town meeting vote on the same items, so I think they would prefer to have it with the May election.
Right. Now, we're going to have to deal with that question too, but
Yeah.
it's the only thing that would make me think it might be
Yes.
worth the 5,200, and I agree with you, I don't think it is.
Yeah, I honestly didn't care either way. If we get 200 people saying they want to do it, it's not going to break my heart at all. But I just have a hard time putting somebody through an election process that's going to last that amount of time to only serve for probably the equal amount of time that they spent running for it. It's a
So
lot.
I guess I would make a motion, if that's what's necessary, that we stay with 4 members until our regular election season.
I can second
I
that.
second that.
Okay. Is any further discussion necessary?
It just seems like that makes common sense.
Okay. And we'll deal with a petition if we are given a petition. I assume those windows apply to the petition as well, but we'll have
I
to see.
think so.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to do a petition, hurry up.
Well, I was just going to ask if there was a way to communicate in case people ask, well, Bob's gone, on the website or something to say, the selectmen, due to these reasons, have voted to wait until the election, however, the legal process, if,
I think that's what we're doing right now.
okay.
They get about a week to do it, right?
Right. I mean, I think we're announcing it right now,
Yeah, put it on the Facebook page or something like that.
I could do that
So-
on Facebook.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty. So it's just the 4 of us.
Yeah.
Okay, now we have a request from Senator Tran's office, proposed legislation. What's that all about?
That is basically if there's anything that you have in mind that you would like him to advocate for or not support in upcoming session, please let his office know. So through the board, I would ask that.
So you have the list, right? Of,
Oh, this isn't a priority. This
No.
isn't a priority of his spending. It's
Right.
just, do we want him
No.
to push for anything?
Yeah,
in
possible bills.
legislation?
oh,
Is the muni bill a dead duck? I mean, we've been talking about that for a long time. Is that?
I can look into that.
Yeah. That would be the possibility of the town looking into running its own utility.
Oh.
What- Similar to Little.
oh yeah, I
know
remember him
Littleton.
talking about that.
Yeah.
Not that long ago either.
I think it's come up several times over the years, and it requires a legislative move. It's not just something that the town could do, but it's,
Right.
I think it came up last time on the heels of the ice storm.
Yeah. That was
You know.
probably the big push, yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah, if that's an option, then I would say we should push for that.
Anything else, or if you want to think of anything else, I mean, I know he has a window of when he wants to hear from us, but
When does he want to hear from us by?
As soon as possible.
Oh.
Session
But I think
starts
we're-
in January.
I think we're always kind of able to talk to our delegation about things we want done. It's just that there's a certain time when they're putting their agenda together that it's helpful if we were to jump in. Does that meet our need? Okay. Another one with a real long lead time is the MPO Subregion 3 representative. I just got elected to replace Paula as the representative for Subregion 3, and they're already soliciting. If you look in your package, there's a whole lot of information about what it takes, and if any selectmen are interested in throwing their hat in the ring to be considered for the next election, which I believe they're going to interview potential candidates in January, if I read it correctly. I would be more than welcome more than willing to step aside if any of you wanted it, or if we think it's time for another town, to have the lead representative, and we can communicate. What it really entails is about a 1-hour meeting once a month, but a lot of reading and a lot of understanding what it's all the, and I don't want this to sound negative, it's the bureaucracy behind the tip. They have proposals and motions and revisions upon revisions, and to supply the Department of Transportation with input that ultimately becomes the tip, which is the Transportation Improvement Plan that funds things like
Summer Street.
Summer Street, exactly. And Paul has traditionally done an excellent job in that space, and obviously it took many, many years, but the fruits of her labors came through, not only with Summer Street, but with Chase Road and, some other processes that came out of there. So, inertia will keep me in that job unless somebody else wants it, but either this board or actually another town, if someone had a keen interest on wanting to do that, I'd be happy to step aside.
I think the real limiting factor was the time of the meeting. When was that again?
It's
was
1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday.
Yeah, so-
But it's one Wednesday a month, and it's run like clockwork. The guy from the DOT comes in and he rips through the agenda. And you almost, if you want to make an input, you almost have to prepare to stop his moving train because
You're gonna get run over.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah.
even though I like those topics and I like serving on the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission, there's a lot of connections of that to the MJTC and the MPO, but that doing it that time of day would be really complicated,
Okay.
meeting-wise.
You may want to, and I'm not pushing Katie at all, but you may want to consider being an alternate where you'd get called on once in a while.
I just wouldn't want to commit to something
Yeah,
during a
okay.
time of day that I
Right.
can't be available.
Okay, understood.
And I can't take time off of work to do that either.
I went as the alternate at the last meeting, so. and
Is that,
you're-
are you volunteering?
Did I describe it? Did I describe it
As the
right?
alternate. Yeah, oh, yeah, he was very, it was, I think, less than an hour. To the point, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
He
but
probably goes to a lot of those.
yeah.
it's very important to have a voice on that
Yeah, really
committee,
is.
though.
But you almost have to be prepared if you don't like what they're doing, or if you want to get on the agenda or make a comment, you have to kind of be ready to do it, because it's your head spins, it goes so fast. And there's a lot of people that are like professional Robert's Rules people that are just, they do it way better than any of us do it.
Well, in the spring, maybe we can nominate someone.
There you go, the new guy, the new person. Okay. So, anyway, I guess we can revisit that, but we'll just let inertia take place in the meantime.
Well, do you want to volunteer for?
Well, it
when
says,
that-
it
is that-
says.
I think it
there's
has to
no
be in
term
by
limit.
January, right? So,
Yeah, well, if something has to be in,
So was it so great that you don't want to do it?
well, it's, I don't want the town not to be represented, but it
Right,
is,
right.
it is several towns.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And frankly, I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but our roads are in pretty good shape. We thanks to Paula and the debt exclusion, we've done a lot. The interesting data point, I might as well take just a minute, is they do a lot of work with demographics that drive the transportation plan. And it's not just roads, it's the MART and public transportation and commuter rail and everything else. And they show a lot of statistical data about income levels and different communities that need different services, et cetera. And obviously, you can kind of pick which ones are heavily represented in the lower income or minorities, in Fitchburg and Orange and some other places. But the one that we tend to lead in, or at least we're among the top, is in age. So to the extent that someone wants to be vigilant in that role, any of the things they do relative to an aging population become very critical to the town of Lunenburg. And so I've been kind of watching that. But there's nothing right now other than the MART little bus, and I know that you've done a lot of work in that space, Phyllis. But I mean, in terms of expanding the commuter rails to off hours and subsidies and fare increases and stuff like that, when they flash the demographics, the only one that kind of Lunenburg stands out on is the age demographic. So that's just a point of interest.
Yeah, and it's,
So yeah, I guess I'm it until somebody wants to be
Okay.
it.
well, thank you, Jamie.
Okay. Minutes. We have minutes from the 16th of October. Warrants. Okay. Accounts payable in the amount of $711,848.40. Another accounts payable in the amount of $249,171.88. Payroll in the amount of $778,991.13. Any action file issues?
Yeah, just want to throw it out there that in trying to do something with our buildings, it's come to the front of my mind again with capital planning, but I think it'd be good to have a meeting with Historic Commission and the APDC to talk about their opinions of things as a starting point, because they're vitally important to building consensus about anything we're going to do. So I think it'd be good to have a workshop or whatever with the group of them.
All three of us together, or two different meetings, one with APDC and one with...
I'd like to get everyone on the same page.
Yeah, I think one meeting would probably be most helpful, really, right?
Okay. I think that's something we should try to get on, you know. I think there's two workshop agenda items. There's several, but there's two that we kind of started on and we're going to revisit. One was back to the facilities thing, and I think that's a good point, and I think it is important to include them. And the other is the finishing up the policies. We had a couple of loose ends on the policies, social media policy, but a couple other ones that we went off to get more information.
Yep.
Now, from a scheduling point of view, our normal workshop in December would have been the 11th, but I understand Phyllis is not going to be with us on the 11th. So considering we're down one anyway, we probably don't want to do a workshop, down two. So I don't know, maybe I'll suggest we skip the workshop for December, but put our mind to doing some good workshop work in January, February.
People have other things on their minds this month
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
We do have planning board, though, coming on the 11th. We've already asked them
For what?
for discussion on
We act-
prohibition of recreational
December
Okay.
11th or January?
December 11th.
December 11th. So they're going to, okay, so Phyllis, you probably, it would be helpful if you have any input you want on the marijuana prohibition issue to get it to the town manager, so that she can. Are you planning? Is everybody planning on being here the 11th and the 18th, other than Phyllis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I am as
Just
well.
to speak to I went to the planning board meeting, and I think primarily what they want to communicate or start to communicate about is as they create the bylaws and the path to prohibition, technically, the selectmen are the ones who have to place the questions on the ballot. So even though that's their process and their plan, they reached a point where they can't plan on behalf of something that we legally need to do. So I think more so than to discuss marijuana, it's to discuss our intent on whether or not we would place the questions that are being formulated onto the ballot.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's very true. I mean,
So it's not really a discussion on what should or shouldn't happen. It's just that they have to reach out to us as the ones who are able to legally place ballot questions.
And it.
but I don't know that we'd place a ballot question unless we think it should or shouldn't happen, right?
Well,
Well,
there'll obviously
correct.
be some discussion.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying which side. I mean, I think we would have to discuss either among ourselves or with them, which obviously would be better.
And what they've worked on basically are options. So they're not really working off an opinion or off of off of what they hope to see happen. They're working off of an opportunity to make sure that the questions are going back out to the community. So what they're putting together isn't their choice, it's to provide a choice. So it's really what will be put out in the spring is an opportunity for everybody to weigh in and for the decision to come from the community. And so they're really mapping out what will be an opportunity for basically two separate pathways. And if one fails, then there's another one ready.
But isn't the planning board's role the regulation of the marijuana industry? I mean, it's odd that you say path to prohibition. I don't think that's in the planning board's wheelhouse.
They're creating the bylaws so that if the community chooses to adopt them, they exist. But then a lot of communities are giving opportunities for people to vote whether or not they want marijuana in town. So they're basically, that's that whole bifurcated approach where the decision, they didn't feel lied with them, or the decision lies with the community. And so there'll be an opportunity to participate. They may even, instead of having one ballot question, say,
Do they
just-
put any ballot questions on?
just a moment.
But I'm trying to understand. Can they put a ballot question on?
No, we do, but one thing is that it can be done as just one question to prohibit or to not prohibit, so on and so forth. Or they might even break it down into a variety of questions so the community could weigh in on cultivation as a separate question, to retail as a separate question, to craft cultivator. And so it may be divided in such a way that there'll really be a lot of opportunity for people to participate in the choice.
Sure, Adam will have a nice presentation.
But that's what they
for
want
us.
to come talk to us about.
Yeah,
so.
let's not have this discussion right now, but I don't think the decision has been made to even determine whether we're going to have that option. It is not the planning board's role.
Right.
Their role is to regulate it if, in fact, we move forward with it, and it's our role to determine how to best determine whether to go forward.
Yeah, they do the where and how.
Right.
Most.
Yeah, exactly.
But we don't have to do that now. But yeah, so they're coming on the 11th?
Yes.
So stay tuned, and the 11th is the time to show up if you have an opinion on that one.
Just before we cruise on, one last comment on the Historic Commission. It'd be nice to send an invitation to the Historic Society, not that they're a public board, but to have them in the room and have them feel included.
Great.
Would be good.
So then it would be the Historic Commission, the Historic Society, and the APDC.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. That would be fun.
Learn a lot about history.
No, it's a great recommendation where we're getting a lot of money for our facade, potentially through grants and things, and you really don't want to create a town center that doesn't make sense. So I like that idea, Damon.
Thanks.
Would that be January you're looking at then?
Yeah, let's.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as possible. January is a good target. Let's see, maybe we can do that and more. I don't know. If we don't, is this thing with the planning board considered a workshop, or is it a joint meeting, or have you thought that?
No, it can be just a joint
Okay.
portion of our meeting, and we can
All right.
designate whatever,
All right.
half an hour or so to that, and then,
Okay.
or longer.
But I'm really not concerned with jamming up the 11th, because I'm concerned with saying, what are we going to do?
We just don't have
for a
enough
workshop.
time to
Yeah, right.
invite them and for them to post meetings. But
Right.
we need a longer lead time than that.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. What are we back to? We're back to, that was an action file issue. Any other action file issues? That was a good point, though. I think that's great. We should do that.
I think so.
Okay, any committee reports?
The Stormwater Task Force met on the 27th. We're grappling with a lot of procedural documentation for maintenance and a minimum control measure that deals with good housekeeping have to be created and in place by June 29th. And that's soon. So we're trying to get our head around that, and we're meeting in December and then hopefully in January with the town manager, because she has to sign off on that we did all this, so we're going to talk to her about getting it done.
I just had,
I missed my
Don't go
chance
for
to- And so like I had just been talking about, I've been attending all of the planning board meetings since they began their work on marijuana, and then, they've been working on solar and different things. And as far as the marijuana goes, because you do see that pop up as a discussion once in a while on social media and in person, is that at every meeting, they have a public hearing portion dedicated to marijuana. They've broken it into all the topics like retail, cultivation, and whatnot. But they'll hear from anybody at every single meeting. There's been a audience participation portion so that they can get a lot of input and feedback and get a feel from the community while they're working on the bylaws. And so for anybody who's curious, there's been a lot of time and effort put into the topic so far, and it's been enjoyable to follow the process. It's been a big part of a lot of their meetings.
just a question. How well attended has it been?
There's been one where at the end I was the only one. I mean, that's pretty common, but for these type of meetings where you're used to not many people, there's been a handful of people that come, and a handful of people at each meeting. There could be 2 or 3 people that actually come up in public comment during public hearing, and like we saw tonight with tax and stuff, there's lots of time no response. So I think there has been some attempt for people to actually participate in planning. Gets less than selectmen's meetings, so to actually, unless there's like,
I know.
Right? So there have been members of the public coming to the meetings, which I think any member of the public is more than what would typically be there.
Sure.
But yeah, so like 3 or 4 people. So it's huge.
Is that,
Yeah, MRPC meets this Thursday, so nothing new there. So I think that's it.
okay. Just, we had a capital planning meeting tonight to start prioritizing our requests, and we're still going to meet again to finalize that, and I'll make the presentation to this board when that happens, but just highlight probably our biggest challenge we're going to have this year is the engine 4 pumper truck, which is $685,000. It's in really tough shape right now. The pump has had issues for years, and they always struggle to meet pump tests on it. This year, they're going to try to put $10,000 into it to make it last another year, but if we approve this line item this year, it'd take more than a year to get the new truck anyway. And even if he makes a fix this year and we don't replace it after a year, it's looking like more like $50,000 to fix the thing, and it's still just not permanently fixed. So we're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna wrap our hands around a $685,000 thing that we're being stuck behind a rock and a hard place on.
But when we were talking about it, we were discussing if you need the whole 685,000 in 1 year. I mean, when you order it, you probably don't pay 685,000 right away. Maybe you could spread it over 2 years.
Yeah, and
Except that there's
wrestle.
something next year coming up that's a big ticket item as well, I bet.
Oh, I
When you
mean,
look at
well-
the 10-year plan, there's always,
Yeah, we'll figure out how to wrestle it to the ground, but
Right.
that's just making you aware of it now. We have to make a decision on that.
Yeah. We wouldn't be able to order something if we didn't have an appropriation, though.
right.
You have to have the entire 685,000
Yeah, we-
appropriated to order it.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, we wouldn't be able to say, well, based on next year's town meeting, because that's subject to
Didn't get
funding.
approved, yeah.
Could not be approved.
Tough one.
That's what I had on that.
Now, I got something from I guess it was the Open Space Committee, the Brandon Tibby thing.
Yes.
And there was a link. Did that go to the whole board or just?
Yeah, I got it.
Everybody get it? Okay. They're asking us to consider endorsing that, so I think we should make that an agenda item and review what it is they're saying and how final an endorsement is. Is it just, that's a good direction, or it's, we'll vote for that if
Are they asking for a letter of support?
Yes. And I think there's a time on that one, too, that they need something.
By the end
in
of the year, I
January.
think?
No, I
Yes.
think, is it?
I'll tell
Because
you in a
they
second.
asked the Stormwater Task Force for
Yeah.
a letter of support too, and I think it had to be, they needed it by year end.
Well, we'll get it on the agenda in enough time to at least discuss whether we want to.
End of calendar year.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So that's something that's coming up. Any other department reports?
No.
No? Okay. Any discussion on Board of Selectmen goals? I mean, I think we want to continue the building discussion, but we talked about that already, and the first step is probably the one that Damon brought up. But when is the next Personnel Committee meeting? Because that,
They don't have a meeting scheduled.
all right, because that'll have to do with the committee alignment as well. Okay. So we will meet the 11th, and Phyllis will not be with us, so have fun wherever you're going to be, and then we'll meet on the 18th before the holiday. Is there any public comment from the public? Is there any public comment from the board?
Nope.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.